chatting with a small business. We are here in this beautiful space, like amazing space at Yoga Veda with Ann-Maree. How are we?
Very well, thanks for wanting to interview me. I feel very, very honoured to be able to show my space and talk about myself. It's my two favourite things.
Fair enough, fair enough. We all do like that. So, this is a fairly exclusive, I guess, space, but also thing, because there's not a lot of places you can do this aerial yoga in South Australia. So I was very glad to find you here, so close to where I am.
Awesome.
So thank you for bringing this beautiful space, and I've got a few clients that I've bought here, and they're absolutely loving it. So that's great. So I guess, how did we come to this?
So I started doing aerial yoga. I did regular yoga for many, many years, as everyone sort of does. You go through that phase, I guess, and then I discovered aerial yoga, and it just resonated with me so quickly. And when I did the practice twice a week, I just noticed such dramatic changes in my body, and I just felt like this is yoga amplified. It is so much better. And so I really just wanted the opportunity to do teacher training for me. I was very passionate about being able to do it regularly. I was looking at moving to Perth at the time, potentially temporarily for a job. And so I was like, I have to make sure I can have this with me. So I did a teacher training for my own benefit. I had a portable frame made, so I could literally just do this anywhere. And then, you know, long story short, I kind of came back to Adelaide, had more steady regular employment in my regular job, and I just wanted to be teaching more. I was teaching one day a week in the city, and I wanted to teach more, but my day job was limiting my flexibility in being able to do that. And I thought the best solution is to have a space closer to home and also be able to kind of run my own thing, which is just a flexible timetable, which is going to allow my day job to still sort of tick over in the background. And I just loved Port Adelaide. It was literally halfway between where I was living and where I was working. So I was like, this sort of feels right. And there's just gorgeous buildings around here. You need beams, you need ceiling height, all the buildings have it. So I was on a bit of a hunt, and there was a few misses through that hunt, and this space was an absolute find, and it was a total accident. It wasn't actually listed at the time as being for lease. There was a guy that had lived here for a really long time, and so it hadn't really been for lease for a long, long time. And I was looking at another space, and the real estate agent said, look, maybe you want to have a look at this space on Timpson Street. I think you might like it. Do you need somewhere to live as well? And I'm like, no. This guy's not getting what I'm after at all. And it was about 6 weeks, this whole thing sort of just sat without anything happening, because there were guys that had moved in and needed to sort of be moved on. And then I finally got to walk in, and we actually had to enter through the basement. So I walked through this dreary basement, and then up through some internal stairs, and then kind of stepped out into this huge space. And I just remember just putting my hands over my mouth, just in total shock, and just going, how much is the rent? And I'm like, yes. It literally was about 14 times the size of what I was looking for. I just wanted to hang maybe 5 hammocks, small classes. You know, I didn't want a big deal. I wasn't even looking at this as a business at the time. It was sort of just going to be my hobby on the side. And then I was like, okay, I've got to grow into this space. It's been offered here. It just felt right, and I'll just have to learn to grow into it. So, you know, 2.5 years later,
Here we are. Okay, so 2.5 years. Well, certainly the photos, you know, on Facebook are beautiful, but does it not much justice at all? Like when you walk in here, so my first experience was the yoga festival that you put on, which was amazing. Lots of different types of yoga that day, and I was like, oh my God, I need to get into this, you know, because you had a no booking policy on the aerial yoga on the day, and I was just like, I need to get in, and I was just like, I'm going to be the first one. Everyone was like,
it's bringing out my militant personality.
But it's, when you walk in, it's like, whoa, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It almost has a bit of a medieval kind of feel to it, but just you know, the props and stuff that you have in here just bring it to life. It's just really nice. I really love it.
It's got a real energy that's sort of all its own. It felt very different when I first arrived, and I wanted to convey an energy and a feeling when you came in, and obviously the aerial is very dramatic in itself, but to have it in a space of this size, it's really, really special. So I'm really glad it kind of translates with other people when they walk in and feel that, because a lot of people see photos, But then I'm always amused when they actually physically come in because they just don't get it from the photos. You can't capture it, even with the most talented photographers.
Yes.
And I have one who's amazing, but it's so hard to really capture
because it's
what
so
it
big.
is. Totally.
The height of this, the ceiling, or no ceiling, should I say?
No ceiling.
Yeah. So someone was living here before?
Yeah. So my understanding, what I've managed to piece together, so back in the 80s it was an art gallery actually. So it had wall hanging fixtures all around the walls. There's actually a couple of old rope sculptures behind those curtains, little secret of the studio, that is still there. They're a couple of 100 kilos each, so they just weren't an option to move. So I just got the drapes put over the top. But after that time when it was sort of officially a gallery, my understanding is a guy just lived here as his home, and he was a bit of an artist, a bit of an eccentric himself, and really just had this epic space to live in for a long time. I don't own the space, I lease it, so my landlord was really happy just to have long-term tenants. So he moved up to Queensland but knew what he had here, so he kind of unofficially sublet it to some other guys, and they really just didn't keep up their end of the bargain of leasing a premise and paying the rent and utilities and all that. So they had to move on, and and I got to be here. But I must say, like, it would be a rough space to live in. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's cold. It does get hot when it gets really hot, but otherwise it's pretty stable because of the stone walls. But it's basic. It's basic. So
Basic but beautiful.
Sense of adventure is needed for sure.
So I guess going back to your journey with aerial, I think we had a conversation once. You're saying that you probably need to go abroad to do it. There's not many people that teach it here, as in like to get your qualifications.
So you don't have to go too abroad. Like, we definitely have an amazing instructor in Australia and New Zealand. However, the actual anti-gravity brand originated in New York City in America. It's now in multiple countries all over the world, but each kind of region has its head trainer, and then that head trainer will kind of train people underneath. So it's a fairly niche market for sure. People that want to teach this are few and far between. And so really, as Adelaide sits in Australia and New Zealand, it's not a big city, so it's not going to really attract people to come here for a training. So most of the trainings that are done will be done in Sydney, Melbourne. They've done them on the Sunshine Coast, mostly because that's a little bit of a hub. And there's a really great studio they can teach from there. There's been a couple of trainings in Adelaide, but for me, I've ended up doing all the ones elsewhere. But the training program is really, really solid. I did yoga training separately though. So the anti-gravity brand is not just yoga. They teach suspension fitness, they do air bar, they do a kids module, they do restorative. So it's quite broad as a fitness modality, but I really wanted to knuckle into the aerial yoga aspect. And what I felt was lacking in their curriculum was teaching you to be a yoga teacher. So you have to go and get that yourself. So I did my Vinyasa 200-hour teacher training for my sort of base yoga training, and then I've ended up falling in love with yin yoga as well. So I've done a lot more teacher trainings with yin yoga, and I kind of combine two because I just think that both modalities are just so nourishing for the body, and they just work the body in a very, very different way that's really accessible for most people.
Yin is amazing. I just love the long stretches because I'm, even as a personal trainer, sometimes pretty cheeky and don't get enough stretching after my...
so important.
I know, so important. So I know with yin I'm forced to be in that space for 45 to 60 minutes, so it's good, and you're not sort of thinking, I really got to be somewhere.
That's
sort of
right,
thing.
squeezing it at the end afterthought of your workout.
Yes, because usually I'm trying to squeeze my workouts in between clients as well, so I might only have 45 minutes, and then you're like, oh, by the time you get changed and stuff, there's just not time. I'll do it later.
Stretch later.
I'll do it later. It'll happen. Not. Go home to kids, and it never really happens. So I know that this is obviously, as you mentioned, not your only hat in terms of career. Tell us a little bit more about what other things you do.
So I'm basically a fully qualified doctor, and I'm a specialist in anaesthesia. So it means I literally put people to sleep for a living, which kind of fits with a yoga teacher in a way. We get people to do deep breathing before they're anaesthetised, so it kind of fits the yoga vibe. I basically studied at university for 8 years. I really neglected my body. I was very intellectual, sat at a desk for long hours. That was kind of my path. I wasn't a physical person in that way, and kind of wore my mental aspects as well, my physical aspects down. So so I moved more into yoga, just found it so nourishing and did it when I kind of had time. And then my anaesthesia training, once I finished medical school, so 8 years of uni, and then that kind of rolled on for, nearly 8-10 years by the time you sort of get through all your exams. So lots of shift work, moving around, and I guess where it all culminated was into a really lovely, stable job in a great department, which was fairly small. Not too much stress, a lot more work-life balance, a lot more predictability in my schedule. And every time, my mum complains at me all the time, every time, Ann-Maree, you create space in your life, you just fill it with something else.
Amen.
So I'm not going to feel sorry for you anymore. And, I just started, the more time I was spending in this space and helping people in this completely different way to how I'd been trained to, just little light bulbs started going off, and I just started thinking, what am I missing here? And I just realised that medicine, as amazing as it is, modern medicine, it saves lives, it's phenomenal, but it is an illness model, and it's there for illness, and it's really got very little place in health and prevention.
Interesting.
And that's what I needed to do here. I just felt like I was kind of shortchanging people by just giving them an anaesthetic for a surgery that they maybe didn't need if they just looked after themselves in the first place.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was kind of making amends with that by being here and in this space, and then that sort of evolved into more study for me. And so I studied for over a year to become an integrative health practitioner, looking at sort of all modalities like Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, Hawaiian medicine, and just starting to bring all those threads together and looking more at a healthcare model rather than an illness model. So there was some meditation teaching in there, and I'm just constantly learning and evolving.
And that's exactly where we need to be going, and I think
Absolutely.
we need to get away from this black and white of, modern medicine is better than old, or old is better than modern. We need to start to really integrate things.
Definitely.
And take our power back as well. That is what frustrates me the most.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with an old colleague, and he was super, super, super overweight. I mean, buttons popping at the front, really badly overweight. And he said to me, I've been to the doctor, I've lost 10 kilos, and the doctor said that he's happy with me, that I don't need to lose any more weight. And inside I was like, do you really need someone to tell you that? But then they use that as an excuse not to get healthy because, the doctor said so.
Yeah, but then I would ask, how fat was your doctor?
Yeah.
The doctors are some of the unhealthiest people around in society right now. I will completely vouch for that. It's really, really sad. And then everyone's taking their healthcare advice from their doctors. I'm like, your doctor might not actually know that. They'll know what to prescribe you for your heart disease.
Yeah.
They won't necessarily talk to you about how to prevent it in the first place.
Correct. Yes. And I think, like you say, it's more of a cure rather than prevention. And you would probably be able to tell me this, but I've heard this from people that to study as a doctor, you actually don't spend a lot of time on nutrition. Zero. You heard it from a doctor.
Literally zero. There's no talk about nutrition. We'll talk about macros. It's like, your diet will have protein and carbohydrates, but there's no real talk about
food as medicine.
Actual food and its role in maintaining a healthy system. And it's a huge disservice to medical students and to doctors coming out. And then when you're in a hospital, the quality of the hospital food is appalling.
Yeah.
In Australia, and it's a completely incorrect message to be giving. And it's really ironic because Hippocrates is the grandfather of modern medicine, and he was quoted as saying, "Let food be thy medicine."
Yeah.
And they just kind of just chucked that bit out and just focused on the kind of modern medicine bit, and they're missing most of it. Definitely.
And we won't go down the rabbit hole with that. I was going to say something, and I was like, we'll be here for a while. So, my daughter loves aerial yoga, but you obviously don't do kids here.
This is an adult-only space. I get asked a lot, and in the early part, it was really challenging for me. But what I saw, and I still see, and it's beautiful but also tragic. Parents just put so much for their kids, They put everything of themselves into their kids. There's so much out there for kids, and it's just like, who's nourishing the parents?
True.
Where are there spaces where just the parent can be, that there's no sign of that kid energy, which is not bad, but you need a break from it sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just decided to go, no, not here. I do take some teenage girls because they're a bit of a different breed.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them are very, very mature, and I think they can benefit from a lot of body confidence and things like that in a practice like this. But yeah, getting down into kids, I'm just like, look, it's a great modality for kids. They love it, but I just decided not to be that kids teacher.
Yeah,
You can't be
fair.
everything.
No, it's true.
I try.
Stay in your lane, don't stay in your lane. So in terms of aerial yoga, what are the differences in benefits versus just, I guess, normal yoga, which is a weird thing to say because now I know there's so many different types of yoga now, but as opposed to non-aerial.
I think some of the really hidden benefits are the proprioception. So proprioception is a fancy word for your joint position sense. So your brain's ability to understand where all of your bits and pieces are in 3D space.
Right.
And integrating that map together so that you can balance more effectively, move more efficiently. So when you are moving in an apparatus like this that is dynamic and can move in all dimensions, your body has to constantly kind of correct and connect to stay upright and balance things. So in this apparatus that's mobile, you're using a lot of little stabilizing muscles in the body that you wouldn't otherwise necessarily be using in a sort of two-dimensional style workout. We don't do as much repetitive motion in this, particularly in traditional yoga where you're doing lots of sun salutations or chaturangas. There can be a lot of wear and tear on those sort of two-dimensional kind of movements.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, your body's able to move in a more fluid kind of way, in a more dynamic way, which I think is healthier for the body overall than having too much stopping and starting. Also, it's the ability for it to actually support the body. So there's a lot of people that can't actually do regular yoga.
Yes.
They can't be on their hands and knees. They feel too much strain in their wrists. They've got joint issues. They're suspended. They're actually supported in this apparatus. So all of a sudden, all of that weight is taken off their tissues. It's like swimming.
Yeah.
You know, it's in the same vein. And then with the floating, there is just something innately calming that happens in your nervous system when you are suspended and floating. And it, you know, maybe it goes back to the womb and that sense of being in the fluid in the womb, but there's something about that, having that suspension factor that works really well. And I think as well for me, it's the creative aspect. It's the self-expressive aspect. Like you just feel amazing in your body when you're working with this because it feels expansive.
Womb, that is my favourite position.
Womb pose.
Womb pose is
such a good one.
Yeah, like you said, it's like you literally feel like you're inside the womb and it's just you.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever really had that feeling anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of really cool.
And that raises a really valid point as well. Inside that apparatus, it's just you and your practice.
Yeah.
You don't actually see a lot going on in the class. It's more about you connecting with yourself and your movement.
No butts in your face.
Yeah, there's no butts in face, there's no mirrors in this studio, and they don't need to be there either. It's about re-establishing that connection with yourself and your body.
Yes, so definitely, womb pose, definitely my favourite. But in terms of the inversions.
Yes, of course.
So good. But when you did it, when you sort of showed us, I was like, there ain't no way I'm doing that. But then because you break it down so well, that you're like, actually, step by step, it's not that hard.
That's right.
And by the end of the lesson, I'm like, woohoo, I am upside down.
Yeah.
Now I got to get back up. But I mean, I didn't really, not that I could see very well, but it didn't sound like anyone else didn't do it. I think most people managed to do it.
Absolutely.
And how many classes have I done? 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a couple of clients last time as well, and you know, with some difficulties, we got there.
Yeah.
But do you find, I guess it's like being a PT, like some people just have less body awareness than
Absolutely.
what other people do?
Yeah, and you know, it always does surprise me. So I start the class and I already start just getting a sense of that body awareness. And you get better and better at picking it the longer you're doing something like this and teaching this sort of modality. And you sort of do get surprised. Like, it's sometimes the ones that go to the gym a lot that actually have less than you'd expect. And people that were dancers when they were little kids but haven't done anything for a long time, their awareness is better. It's like their brain has remembered that pathway, and it just has to be sort of reignited again.
Yeah.
So it's such a real thing, but what does happen quite consistently is when you go upside down, everybody's body awareness disappears.
Yes.
Because your brain has learnt this upright map, and the minute you turn that literally on its head, you suddenly don't really have full confidence where your arms are in relation to your legs. Totally. That's why we build it slowly, because it's just getting you there and allowing the brain and your own fear response to start kind of reassuring itself and getting there in a gradual way.
I must admit, even though I did the inversions fine, there's always that like couple of seconds of it's going to be okay before you do it. And even though I've done it a few times now, it's just that little pep talk, but then, and I think it's not being upside down that worries me, it's not being able to get back up. So I need to, like, before I go down, remember how to get up and go, okay, I just need to do this and I'll be out of it and I'll be fine. And once I like go through that in my head, then I'm good. But
it's also the reason that any properly trained aerial yoga teacher should never be in their hammock in a beginner's class when the class is going upside down. It's golden rule 101. So when I'm demonstrating and I show the inversion, for beginners, not so much my open guys, they know what they're doing, they've been doing this for a while, but I'm always physically out of the hammock so that anyone that has that brain freeze, you'll get out, because I'll be there to actually help you out. But it's rarely needed.
Yes, and so going back to that, so it's 3 fundamentals or beginners classes you need to do before you go into the open.
Look, I had to pull a number out of the air. So I find some people, like I've got some people on my Thursday nights that have never left fundamentals. They're really happy in that class, and then others are like chomping at the bit to hit that open level class, and then they're floundering. It's like there's nothing wrong with staying in fundamentals. Just stay there, get all that stuff down. There is gold in it, you know, year in, year out. You can just really refine all of those practices in fundamentals. But the open is just maybe taking things another level and not demonstrating inversions to such an extent. We start changing wraps and the amount of support the body has, but we don't actually break it down to the same extent, if that makes sense.
And I guess people have a bit more freedom to kind of take different options, like you do in yoga, like, you know, they'll start at this and go, okay, you know, if you're confident, this is the next option, and the next option, and the next option.
Absolutely.
But I can definitely see how this is so much better, because the amount of times in a yoga class you'll hear an instructor go, if this isn't so good for your knees, or if this isn't so good for your wrist, then this is another option. I mean, I've never really heard you have to give many options, because, you're not pressed, you've got no gravity, basically, so you're not pressing up against the joints, so it's good. I really enjoy it. So in terms of, I wouldn't say not benefits, because that's not really what I'm trying to get at, but obviously there are some people that it might not be suited to.
Okay, no, it's fair. So I wouldn't say the elderly. I've got a 76-year-old student that has been coming for over a year now. He loves it. It's benefited his body so much. The main contraindications are more to the inversions rather than any old thing in the aerial hammock, because we have a restorative class as well, which is really accessible for anybody. So if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, if you've got glaucoma, which is a pressure eye disease, if you are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, if you've had recent surgery in the last sort of 3 to 6 months, depending on the type of surgery, they're kind of the main ones. Everything else we can work around. Some people have complained about motion sickness or vertigo and not being able to do aerial. As long as you let the teacher know, when you're first learning, you'll be moving in the fabric quite a bit. There'll be a bit of swing because you're not used to it yet. But if you flag that with the teacher, that teacher will be out and actually steadying you all the time. So they're easy to work around. Body size is a really, really good point, because one of the things I love about this is it supports body weight. So people that are heavier can actually benefit from this practice. The fabric itself will hold up to 200 kilograms, which is fantastic. This studio, however, is not fit. I shouldn't say not fit. It hasn't got the modern infrastructure to support 11 people that are of that body weight who are on adjoining beams. So in a regular modern building where you've got steel beams, not timber, then you can, technically your teachers should be able to take that sort of weight of people. Where the problem can occur is if there's so much soft tissue you can't move your limbs to actually wrap around the fabric and things like that, that can be a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard and fast rule, and I mean if you Google and YouTube, there are some incredible aerial practitioners that are quite bigger people, and it's incredible what they'll do with the apparatus. So it's really, really supportive. Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Have we covered everything?
I think so. Yeah, I think as far as the studio stuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
it's amazing. So, where can we find you?
Well, here.
on the socials,
home.
on the socials and the web.
Yeah, so the studio itself is located at 9 Timpson Street. It is in Port Adelaide. It is tucked down this little street that no one really knows about, but once you found it, it's quite obvious. There's a red door outside, you can't miss it. As far as socials, we've got a website which is a little bit behind the times, but it's www.yogavedaadelaide.com.au. Facebook is Yoga Veda Adelaide, Instagram is Yoga Veda Adelaide, and I think that's it. Oh, and I will plug my YouTube channel.
I was about to say, you do have a YouTube channel, I know that.
So bad at self-promotion. So I've got a YouTube channel with my sort of doctor, holistic practitioner hat on, so it's called The Whole Doctor. It's on YouTube. I've been going for about 5 months and I have weekly content. So there's a new video every week. Yesterday I just uploaded part 1 of a 3-part series on how to eat, which is really juicy topic. So yeah.
Isn't it bizarre how we have to go back to, how to eat?
I know. Because we're so focused on the what. Like, what should I be eating? And it seems to change every week what people recommend. It's like, wait a minute, how are you eating? How are you eating? Are you stressed? Are you rushing? Are you, eating portable food constantly?
Yeah.
Yelling at your kids? Are you watching something stressful while you're eating? That's the how to eat.
That's just a very interesting topic. You're right, because most people are focused on the what, the macros, the calories, it's just such an obsession, and there's just so much more to it than that. So go to the YouTube channel to find out more about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So I am going to hopefully get in on Thursday night. It's not already picked out.
Wait list at the moment.
We'll try our best, but otherwise I'll see you at the next lesson. So thank you for coming, and yes, have a great day.
Thanks for the opportunity. See you soon.